Hey everyone, Mango7Roll here. How we doing today? Welcome to another episode of Epic 7. This is going to be, it was going to be like a patch overview, but this patch has nothing in it but FLAN, her side story, and the Powder of Knowledge shop rotation. So let's talk about that first. First off, we have Alabastron, which is Kisei's Big Boob artifact, I believe. Don't remember what it does because I don't remember it being very good. Doctor's Bag for Ray's artifact, also not a very great artifact. Time Matter, also not a very great artifact. And then Song of Stars, really fantastic artifact. So out of these four, if you are going to buy one, I would definitely recommend picking up Song of Stars. I think it's one that's worth picking up, just because Song of Stars is such a great artifact, specifically for stuff like one-shot Banshee, one-shot Wyvern. Any sort of PvE, it just really helps out. I love the artifact, and it's great for support rangers when you're doing bosses and stuff like that. So I definitely think this is one of the ones I would pick up, just because it's just a great artifact if you don't have it. The 4-stars are really good as well. Dust Devil, Wondrous Potion Vial, Hellcutter, and Adamant Shield. I couldn't see myself buying one of these, just because you'll get it eventually, and like, it just sucks to spend this much on one of these when you should theoretically get a ton of the copies, especially if you summon during the right Mystic rotation as well. So I wouldn't recommend buying one of these, but I wouldn't fault anybody for buying Wondrous Potion Vial or maybe Adamant Shield, but definitely Wondrous Potion Vial. I think that's one that's great to use, especially for PvE. So that's it for the Powder shop. Let's take a look at FLAN and talk about whether or not you should summon for her. So first off, let's talk about our artifact, Unseen Observer here. This has a 20% CR boost of the caster when they use a non-attack skill, and also acquires 10 souls for your team. So it's like a mini Tagael's Tome that can be used on a ranger. I really love this artifact. I have a thing when people cross their legs sitting, especially when they're like bending a whip. I have a thing, okay? I have a problem trying to fix it. I'm gonna get this artifact. It's the thing that's happening. Art aside, I think it's a great artifact. I think it's really unique, which is important. Nothing else really does this. Actually, nothing else does this at all. Like, both of these things really for rangers, so I do think this is one worth getting. I'm personally summoning for FLAN, of course. I love her design. We'll talk about whether or not you should summon for them in a second. But if I don't get Unseen Observer from summons, I will be buying this artifact from the shop that goes alongside it now that they added. Okay, let's take a look at FLAN now and talk about our kit. And as I say with every unit, whether or not you should summon for them, you should wait a couple days, especially if you're worried about your Covenant bookmarks. And with Christmas coming around, with them wanting to steal all your money with your gifts and stuff like that, I would expect some pretty good stuff in the next month and a half or so. So be really careful with your bookmarks. So with FLAN, I am worried for a couple of reasons with her skill set. First off is her soul burn on her skill 1 is a effect chance increase and also dispels an additional buff. But most importantly, it's a soul burn on her skill 1 when she has 2 active other skills, skill 2 and skill 3, which just kind of makes it so you don't have that opening that other people have, like Tywin with his burn, like anybody else that has a burn on their skill 2 and skill 3. I'm blanking completely, but it makes a massive difference for characters like this. For example, we have Mui here, who doesn't have a burn on her skill 2 and skill 3, but if she did have a burn on either one of those things that was somewhat decent, she'd be a fantastic unit. But because it's on her skill 1, it ends up not doing anything, because you're not using it turn 1, you're using like your skill 3 or skill 2, and then it's going to be turn 3 until you actually get your burn off, and you're not going to be burning that, you're burning something else at that point. So I just super dislike this, and I think it really hurts this type of character, and I really hope they stop doing it. So the other thing with this one here is not everybody fully understands how effect resistance, effectiveness, and debuff landing works. A lot of people will read this and think it lands 100% of the time because it says 100%, but it doesn't, because that's just the chance for the actual proc to happen. But then you have to pass the effectiveness and effect resist check, which makes it very unlikely to land. Like if you don't have effectiveness, you're not going to land, even though that says 100%. The way around that is ignores effect resistance on your soul burn, which is often there, like from Araminta has it, and Cerise has it on her skill 2 as well. So keep that in mind when you're using this. It's not going to work 100% of the time, even though it says it, and maybe that's something I need to make a video on. Do people not fully understand that still? Is that something I should do to kind of explain? Okay, let's talk a little bit about data monopoly here. The first thing is it's just like Oxlot's skill 2. The only difference is, one, it's less combat readiness. It's 40% versus Oxlot's whatever percent his is basically a full CR bar. And it is also critical hit damage for 2 turns instead of attack for 2 turns. So there are bonuses and downsides to this ability versus Oxlot's. The first one is a lot of people buff themselves with attack now. So if you Oxlot somebody up, you're kind of wasting that attack buff. But if you data monopoly somebody up, you're giving them critical hit damage on top of that attack buff. So that's pretty good upside there. But the downside is that it's only 40% CR fully Mulligored. So you're going to need some speed on that person. So even if you do get that critical hit damage on that self-buffing attacker, you're also going to lose a bunch of attack because you have to put speed on your unit. Probably about 180 to 220, I think, just to be entirely safe. But on the other hand, again, the good news is after that first turn, you'll be better on that character because they'll actually take turns instead of being super slow. So I'm not sure what to think about this ability, and I definitely need to test it out. And I'm more excited for skill 2 than I am for skill 3. I think skill 3 is really underwhelming for me. Okay, let's take a look at Advantageous Deal here. This one I'm really underwhelmed with. I see what they're doing here, but I don't think it's good enough without a soul burn attached to it. So what this does is decrease defense on the enemy team. It also makes them unhealable for 2 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. And kind of the trick with this one, what makes it in quotes good, is it does not do damage. So what that does it ignores elemental disadvantage, and it also ignores mischance. So if somebody has a 100% chance to dodge, this is going to ignore that because it doesn't hit, if that makes any sense. So in essence, you're not going to get Moonlight Dreambladed, you're not going to give Rylot a stack of his passive, you're not going to get counterattacked by Charles, you're not going to get Elbrist, you're not going to what else are you not going to do? You're not going to give SSB any passives. But that's it. That's all you're doing. And you kind of want to use her as an opener, right? Because of this ability. But she doesn't help herself do it, if that makes sense. Like she doesn't dispel buffs. She doesn't do anything like that. So in order to really take advantage of this and use this as like a cleave potential ability, you're going to have to open up with somebody like Basar first. And guess what? Basar's gonna miss. Basar's going to proc MLDB. Basar's going to push all those things up. So I'm not sure what to think about this. And this is why I'm not a huge fan of FLAN. In my head, I don't see Advantageous Deal being advantageous. I don't like the ability. I think Unhealable is also not the best debuff. I'm just not a fan of this, you know? I feel like most of the healers just dispel Unhealable and then heal on the same turn anyway, so I'm really, really torn on this, and I can't think of in my head a reason to use this in a team, unless you absolutely know they're not on immunity. And yeah, you could go with Basar first and then do this, but you could do Basar and basically literally anybody else that probably does way better things. So when I look at FLAN, I'm really looking at Data Monopoly over Advantageous Deal and looking at her for longer battles. I'm looking at her as like a bruiser-based team maybe, instead of a cleaver, instead of an enabler, and just having her start off with Data Monopoly, and then work like an Advantageous Deal turn 2 or something like that. I'm just really not sure, and I'm really not a fan. So I'm not a FLAN, LOL. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say. It's just such a weird set. On paper, each of these things are good, but together I just don't see I just don't see it, you know? Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before, but I am definitely weary of how good she's actually going to be. So, should you pull for FLAN? No, I don't think so. I think if you know you should pull for FLAN, it's going to be in like a week from now when we test her out in Guild Wars and RTA and stuff like that. So I just definitely would not be pulling for her right at the start unless you like FLAN for FLAN, which, like, look at her. Of course you like FLAN for FLAN, right? So that's just something to consider. And the other thing, too, I was thinking about this is she's not even solid in PvE, right? You don't really like stuff like data monopoly in PvE because it doesn't always hit the person you want to hit. So, yeah. The other thing I should probably mention is not a Wyvern user either, because her skill 1 doesn't have a debuff outside of Song of Stars, maybe. And the skill 3 is on too long of a cooldown, 5 turns, for it to really do anything. So not a fan of her there either. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to pull for her tomorrow, despite everything I said, just because I love her design. And what's her quest called? How to Be a Sister. I think that's awesome. And yeah, let me know if you think I'm right here, if you think I'm wrong. I'm not even sure. I'm really confused right now. I'm really confused with FLAN. I keep thinking, like, they're not going to make FLAN suck, right? But I look at her and I'm like, she sucks, right? I don't know. Maybe this is just so good in a vacuum. I'm trying to highlight it, but I can't. Maybe Data Monopoly is just so good in certain situations that makes her, like, a must, and all you basically use her as is Data Monopoly and nothing else? Interesting. I'm gonna marinate on this a little bit more and summon for her tomorrow and try her out. So thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe as always, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.